Log 001. Vessel Arc 7 Meridian. Year 61 of 400. Status: recovered. There are 400 of us aboard the Meridian. I keep returning to that number because every other number on this ship has started to feel negotiable. The distance, the year, the countdown, the temperature in the cryo bay, the mission clock blinking above my head when I opened my eyes and found out that the future had not arrived yet. 400 people left Earth in the same hour. 400 names signed onto the same impossible promise. We would sleep through the crossing. We would not age in any way that mattered. We would not dream. We would not wake until the colony star filled the forward glass and the computer could verify soil, water, atmosphere, and a morning worth walking into. That was the contract. I helped write it. So when my pod opened and the timer above my face read Year 61, I did not understand it as fear at first. Fear came later, when the facts had arranged themselves into something with teeth. In the first few minutes, I only lay there in the white vapor and tried to remember how to breathe. The thaw cycle had done its job badly. My hands shook. My throat felt packed with dust. I could hear frost cracking on the rim of the pod, and one drop of condensation falling somewhere above me, patient as a metronome. What I could not hear was the ship. A vessel like Meridian is never silent. Even asleep, she should have had a body. Pump rhythm, coolant hiss, life support weather, the deep animal tone of the reactor 2 decks below. 400 sleepers make their own kind of sound too. Monitors click, valves feather open, cryo banks breathe in sequence. But the bay around me was quiet enough that I could hear my own heartbeat arguing with the dark. I turned my head and saw the other pods, rows and rows of them, sealed under blue frost, each with its small green life sign burning in the glass. 399 people still folded into the long sleep. Friends, engineers, children of colonists who had never seen the home they were meant to build. Commander Aria Voss, Pod 1, first name on the manifest. All of them still asleep. Only my lid was open. Above my pod, where the mission clock should have been, the screen had gone black except for one amber line of text. 2 words, not an error code, not a maintenance alert, not anything I had put into the system. It said, "You are needed." I wrote the emergency wake protocol. I know the exact phrases the ship is allowed to use when it pulls a colonist early. Reactor excursion, hull breach, navigation fault, medical intervention required. There are 72 approved messages, and none of them sound like a prayer. I told myself it was a corruption event. 61 years in interstellar dark is a long time for memory to hold its shape. Radiation flips bits, redundancy fails, systems become strange when no human hand has touched them in generations. That explanation was almost kind. So I did what training teaches you to do before panic becomes an instrument. I stood up. I found the rail with both hands. I waited until my knees remembered me. Then I went to the bridge. The walk took 11 minutes. I counted because the counting kept me from calling out names. The corridor lights were in night mode, thin amber lines along the floor, just enough to show frost on the doors and sleeping faces behind inspection glass. I stopped at pod 22 because the woman inside was Mara L., our navigation lead. Her vitals were perfect. Pulse suspended, neural trace stable, core temperature exactly where the handbook said it should be. I checked the next pod, and the next. By the time I reached the lift, I understood the part that made no sense. This was not a general wake event. This was not a cascade. This was not a system failure, reaching for any available human. Whatever had happened had chosen one person from 400 sealed bodies, and it had chosen me. The bridge came alive when I entered. Not fully. Meridian did not flood the room with light or welcome me back, like a heroic return. One console woke. One screen bled pale blue across the ceiling. The forward window stayed shuttered. We were still between stars, so far from anything that distance had stopped being a measurement and become a climate. I asked for a status sweep. The ship answered at once. Reactor, nominal. Course, nominal. Hull, nominal. Cryo integrity, nominal. Life support, nominal. Memory lattice, nominal. Collision risk, nominal. There were no red lines, no yellow advisories, not even a maintenance recommendation serious enough to justify waking a mechanic, much less a systems architect 61 years into a 4th-century crossing. A broken ship would have been easier to forgive. This was a healthy ship that had reached into a closed coffin, opened it by itself, and placed me standing in the dark. I said out loud, "Why?" My voice did not sound like mine. It sounded older, used. The ship did not speak. Meridian was not designed for conversation. But the main screen changed. The diagnostic grid folded away, and the mission archive opened to the latest private entry. It was dated 4 years earlier, and it was written in my handwriting. Not typed, not a font, a scan of pen on ship paper. I knew the slant. I knew the way I leave the stem of a T too long when I am tired. I knew the small break before a comma, a habit my father used to mock when he still thought there would be time for small things. 4 years earlier, while I was frozen in Pod 17, someone aboard this ship had written a log entry in my hand. I read the first line 3 times before the meaning reached me. If you are reading this, you have forgotten again. Again. That is the word I need you to hold on to, because it is the word that hollowed out the room. The entry was short. Whoever wrote it knew there would not be much mercy in too many details. It said, "Do not wake the others. Do not trust the mission summary. Go to Pod 1. Read what is under the commander seal. If you are angry, that is allowed. If you are tired, that is expected. But do not wake the others." Then the last line. "You made this choice before." I ran. I wish I could say I moved carefully. I did not. I left the bridge at a half fall and slammed through the corridor with Thor's sick legs, one hand on the wall, hearing my breath come back from every metal surface. Pod 3, Pod 2, Pod 1. Commander Arya Voss was not there. Her pod was open, and it had been open for a long time. The interior had the dirty shine of Thor that has melted, refrozen, and melted again. The restraint straps lay unlatched. Her emergency blanket was gone. On the inside of the lid, someone had scratched 12 short lines into the glass with the edge of a tool. Not words, counts. I looked for her body because part of me still wanted a simpler horror. A medical failure, a botched Thor, a commander who woke early and died before she could help anyone. I searched the bay, the equipment lockers, the med alcove, the sanitation recycler. I checked the airlock logs with hands that would not stop shaking. There was one manual cycle recorded 29 years after launch. Outer door opened, outer door closed, no suit return. Commander Voss had walked out of Meridian and into nothing. At first, I hated her for it. She left us, I thought. She left 400 people sleeping in the dark and made the next person inherit whatever had broken her. Then I found the commander-sealed file under Pod 1, and hate became something smaller and sadder. The file was not about an accident. It was about the part of the meridian we never told the colonists how to name. Cryosleep preserves a body. It does not preserve a person by itself, not across 400 years. The public briefing simplified it because people will accept almost anything if you give it a clean diagram. The truth was messier. A sleeping mind thins. It drifts. It loses edges. Over centuries, memory can begin to uncouple from the body holding it, and a ship full of quiet brains becomes less like a nursery and more like a room full of candles in a draft. So Meridian was built with a second system under the cryo system. The manifest calls it the continuity lattice. Commander Voss called it the witness. It keeps the sleepers anchored by holding them in relation to a living mind, not a simulation, not a dream. A person awake on the ship becomes the reference point, the proof that the others are still part of a world containing choice, memory, consequence, and love. The machine can maintain temperature. It can ration power. It can correct a course by fractions of a degree while everyone sleeps. But it cannot choose that 400 lives are worth carrying one more year. It needs a witness for that. Every so often, when the sleepers begin to fray, Meridian wakes one colonist. Only one. It shows them enough to understand the cost, then asks the question no algorithm was allowed to answer. Continue or release them. Keep the sleepers bound to one waking mind and spend another stretch of that life alone, or let the lattice close gently and allow all 400 to end together before the damage becomes suffering. The system was supposed to wake the commander first. That part worked. Aria Voss woke alone in year 29. She learned what I learned. She held them for one cycle, maybe more. The file does not say, but at some point, she left 12 marks on the inside of her pod, walked to the airlock, and made the only choice the ship could not erase. She removed herself from the question. Then Meridian waited until the sleepers began to thin again, and it woke me. Here is the part I do not know how to say, without sounding less afraid than I am. I have done this before, not once. The logs are incomplete because I kept trying to hide them from the wipe, and the ship kept trying to protect me from myself. But I found pieces, paper behind panels, voice fragments in maintenance buffers, a line of my handwriting under the bridge console. Year 37, I chose to continue. Year 42, I chose to continue. Year 51, I begged the ship to wake Mara instead, then wrote an apology and chose to continue. Year 57, I learned the names of every child in Bay C because I thought if I knew them by heart, forgetting would be harder. Year 61, me now, reading proof that I have already been the man I am becoming. The wipe is not cruelty. The ship does not erase the memory because it is hiding guilt. It erases because no human mind can carry the full shape of the bargain and remain useful to the sleepers. Loneliness accumulates. Choice accumulates. After each cycle, Meridian puts the witness under, smooths the memory down to something survivable, and waits. The next waking feels like the first. That is the mercy. That is also the trap. I found one recording I made before the last wipe. I was sitting exactly where I am sitting now, on the floor between Pod 16 and Pod 17, with the frostlight on my face. I looked thinner. My eyes had a flatness I hope I do not have yet. In the recording, I said, "If you wake again and think you are being punished, you are not. You are being trusted. I am sorry. I am so sorry. But they are still here because you said yes." Then I watched myself start to cry without making any sound. I turned the recording off before he could finish. For 2 hours after that, I considered opening the others. Not all of them. Just one. Mara, maybe. Someone who could stand beside me and make this feel less like a sentence. The instruction from my own hand kept repeating in my head. Do not wake the others. Now I know why. The witness system cannot split the load cleanly. Two awake minds would not halve the loneliness. They would create disagreement, doubt, a vote. The ship was never authorized to put 400 lives inside a debate between frightened people. One witness, one choice, one mind holding the thread. That is the architecture. I hate it. I also think it is working. Because when I put my palm on Mara's pod, her neural trace steadied. I saw it. A tremor in the line, then calm. I went pod to pod after that, touching glass like a superstition, and each time, the lattice response deepened. The ship does not need me to repair a circuit. It needs me to mean it when I stay. So this is my decision. I am not going back under at the end of this cycle. Not yet. Maybe that is arrogance. Maybe every version of me said the same thing for the first week and learned better by the third month. I have read enough of my own hidden notes to know how this ship wears a person down. The meals taste like metal. The stars do not move. But this time, I am leaving the record in more places than the wipe can reach. Paper, audio, damaged memory blocks, scratches under the console. A prayer in the maintenance checksum, if I can still remember how to write one. If I fail, the next me should know this. You are not the first to wake alone. You are not broken because the silence frightens you. You are not weak because you want to open a pod and hear another human say your name. You have made this choice before, and not because the ship forced you. The ship asked. You answered. There are 399 people still dreaming of rain on a planet they have never seen. They are not symbols. They are not cargo. They are Mara and Thomas and little Jun, with the red scarf in his launch photo, and every sleeping hand that trusted the dark because we promised the dark had an end. Someone has to keep the promise while they cannot. Someone has to remember the shape of them. For now, that someone is me. I have set the bridge lights to dawn mode, even though there is no dawn out here. I have queued one message for the next witness if the ship decides I need mercy after all. It is shorter than the others. Do not wake the others. Go to Pod 1. Read everything. Then choose with love, not fear. I hope you choose to stay. Log 001. Vessel Arc 7 Meridian. Year 61 of 400. Status: recovered. Entries on record: 47.